In the next part of this slideshow, we're going to look at cooperation, selfishness, and altruism, and how individuals who are genetically inclined to only look after their own reproductive interests, how they can display behaviors such as altruism from an evolutionary approach. So, in general, if we look at kindness, we think of this as being helping others whether or not it helps yourself. And in altruistic behaviors, they are behaviors that come at a cost to the individual, essentially self-sacrifice to the behavior of somebody other than yourself. And generally, in the biological world, kin selection is going to be involved. So if you are sacrificing yourself, you are more inclined to do that if the individuals who are going to benefit from that sacrifice are directly related to you. So each one of the images below is a video link. So if you open up the slideshow, you should definitely click on the active links and watch the video about the spider and about the Belding's ground squirrel. But in each of these, we look at the Australian spider, and hopefully you have left and gone to watch the video. And what you saw there is that the mother, after the spiderlings hatch from their eggs, will go into the web and jostle the web to spur her young into recognizing that it's time to kill. And she will actually continue shaking it until most of the spiderlings have been alerted to the intruder on the web, and she'll actually push herself into the young to encourage them to envenomate her, and truly will allow her young to kill her, to consume her, so that they have been ensured of both learning the behavior that's necessary to live, learning how to attack from the web, even though spinning the web is an innate behavior, and they will be triggered to learn how to envenomate their prey so that they can kill and consume. For the Belding's ground squirrel, what tends to happen is the older females, and the ground squirrels live in a matriarchal society, so the females tend to stay put in the area where they were born. The males will leave and go find another colony. And thus, for the females in the group, she is related to all of the other females and all of the young individuals who are there. They're either her relatives or her direct descendants. For the males, that's not the case, since they have come into this colony and may actually leave again to go join another colony. They have a limited investment in all of the animals that live there. And so if a hawk or another predator is in the area, it's the older females who will rise up and begin to chirp to alert everybody else in the colony that there's a predator in the area. And this is actually what the case study that you're going to be doing on Friday is about, the Belding's ground squirrel. Hamilton's rule looks at altruism and recognizes that these behaviors, these altruistic, these self-sacrificing behaviors, are most commonly, or they most commonly take place when the altruism benefits close relatives. And the closer the relatives, the more likely the individual is to perform an altruistic action, and the more dangerous an altruistic action they will tend to take. So even though they seem to be doing something that is self-sacrificing, really what they're doing is protecting their genes. They're protecting the offspring who house 50% of their genes, and their close kin who also share a large percentage of their genes. So pause the video while you think about this one and start it when you're done. And hopefully you realize that the son with the flat tire would be the most closely related and the one most likely to receive help from from the parent. And so if we redefine an animal's fitness, rather than the fitness directly being their survival, their longevity, and their reproductive output, we have to factor in the indirect fitness as well. And this is the reproductive output of your genes, because your altruistic action results in close kin and descendants surviving to pass along their genes. And so the inclusive fitness is essentially the total fitness. It's the sum of the direct fitness, your ability to pass on your genes, plus your indirect fitness, the ability of your close relatives, your siblings, your offspring, your cousins, to be able to reproduce. And so sometimes sacrificing yourself, if it means saving a large number of relatives, is actually in your genetic best interest. And sometimes there are conflicts in this. Since we don't share 100% of the same alleles, there's always going to be some battle, and gestational diabetes is one of these. Essentially, a fetus in a female is looked at as by the body as being a parasite, and parasites are things that host organisms generally try to protect themselves from. And so the mother's body is in this conflict of trying to protect and raise this, or gestate this fetus, and trying to get rid of the parasite that's inside. And sometimes it doesn't work out very well, and so the gestational diabetes results. And sometimes we see altruism with directed towards unrelated individuals, and this is often demonstrated by reciprocal altruism. And if you click on the reciprocal altruism link, there's about a 2.5-minute video by evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins explaining how individuals who should by all rights be selfish, should look to just perpetuate their own genes, can sometimes benefit more greatly through altruism by protecting a large number of genetically related people. But as you see the vampire bats here, they are animals that will often engage in reciprocal altruism. They will give blood to an unrelated bat in the colony. And you can think about, why might they do this? Well, if you live in a colony and you go back day after day to the same cave, sometimes you aren't lucky and you don't find a cow to suck the blood from. And so if you are willing to give blood on some days to individuals who weren't as lucky as yourself, on the days when you aren't lucky, you can expect to get this reciprocity. And so it's essentially this stored goodwill. You know that you'll get yours if you give someone theirs. Essentially, you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. And if you look at it, we're all born with 2 kidneys. Almost all of us. We only need one, and yet almost nobody donates their kidney to a non-relative. And again, think about that one, and we can discuss this on Friday as well. But in order for reciprocal altruism to occur, like in the bonobo and chimpanzee societies and the vampire bats that you saw before, they have to know and be able to count upon repeated interactions. If they're going to give blood, but they're never going to see that bat again, they're never going to get the blood back in return, and so that would not be adaptive. It also has to be of tremendous value to the recipient, for the bat that really needs that blood, but only a little cost to the donor. So that bat isn't going to starve. It's not going to fail to make it through the night if it gives a little bit of its blood. So small cost to the donor and of great benefit to the recipient in order for reciprocal altruism to be of benefit. And the society has to be able to recognize and punish cheaters. If there's one vampire bat that just never goes out and always wants to bum some blood from a neighbor, they need to be able to recognize that and stop giving blood to that individual. That individual has to be punished. And so if you think about it, why is it easier to remember gossip than the vocabulary for this chapter? And, if you think about it, gossip is essentially looking at that third step in the requirements for reciprocal altruism. We use gossip essentially to talk about other people, to talk about what they do well and how they need praise and reward, and what they're doing wrong, and when and how we need to punish. And so gossip actually is, or at least can be, adaptive. And in an alien environment, these behaviors that have been perpetuated will tend to continue even though in the new environment they may not be adaptive and may actually be maladaptive. So humans living in a society with 24/7 access to food is an alien environment. That's not the same as the one in which we evolved. And so craving high-fat foods like we do is now not good and leads to things like obesity, but it's still programmed into our genetics to say, ooh, there's a donut, I should eat that because it has lots of fat and lots of sugar. For the Belding ground squirrel, if you were to take one of those older females and put her in a different colony, even though she is not related to any of those members, she will still be one of the first ones to get up and call, because that's what her prepared learning has told her to do. That's what her genetics has programmed her to do. And even though she's now in a new environment, she's still going to stand up and squeak when she sees that hawk. And so, could selfish genes ever win out completely? And while it might happen in a small group, that the individuals who are selfish might manage to reproduce, within the entire population, that's never going to become dominant, because if you're selfish and you pass on selfish genes, then your offspring are selfish. And in each situation, they are less likely to have their genes passed on than the rest of the society, in which the selfless genes are passed on and a greater percentage of their genes are present in the gene pool, because their offspring survive and their close kin survive even if they have not survived after reproducing. And so the selfish genes can never take over and dominate in a population. And this last one we will also talk about in class. So just to kind of think about it with the holidays coming around, when we donate money or we donate blood or we donate food or coats or whatever it is that we're doing, is this purely altruistic? To think about that and be prepared to talk about that on Friday too.